What's good, everybody? What's good, everybody? This is the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. It's Offsides, Mark, Ryan, and Diesel, and we are the Fan Upstate rolling on until 7 p.m. today. Can I get an amen? YouTube audience, what is good? YouTube audience, what's that you say? Well, all you got to do is go to YouTube, look up the Fan Upstate, and the sultry tones, the beer bellies of Mark, Ryan, and Diesel are on your video screen.
No one ever needed to see that.
It is fantastic to be here with you guys today.
It's what the kids call nightmare fuel, Mark.
Yeah, it certainly
nightmare
is.
Fuel.
Certainly is. Guys, we are jam-packed. Are you ready to have some fun with us over the next 4 hours? Here's how you can take part. 844-FAN-PHONE. That's 844-FANFONE. That's 844-326-3663. The text line is there for you at 71307. Just start your text with the word fan, and away you go on the show. Coming up on the show today, a criticism of Clemson football by Clemson football fans. The latest in the Lamar Jackson bomb drops. We will take your final votes on the non-sports bracket that we're going to run this year. Our media mock draft continues at 4 o'clock p.m. If you listen to this show, you often hear me discuss my radio mentors, right? One of my two radio mentors is making the pick for Seattle from Seattle today, Owen Murphy, at 4 o'clock p.m. Chris Phillips at 4:40 p.m. today. Diesel and I have kind of joked that it's hard for anybody to get Chris to admit anything that is negative about Gamecock athletics on our show, right? So we're going to try to hold Chris's feet to the fire at 4:40 p.m. today. Here is going to be the question. Nobody tell him this ahead of time, okay? This is a private conversation just between you and I. He is playing, the hypothetical is his team is playing the Lady Gamecocks in the tournaments. How do you beat them? What's the game plan? We'll see if he answers that question coming up at 4:40 p.m. We've got the top 5 at 5. We have ranked NFL franchises by reputation. We have onsides and offsides at 5:40. And we have you here on the most interactive sports radio show anywhere. Buckle up, my friends, because away we go. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a major debate as to whether this Final Four is going to be highly watched, not highly watched, etc. I think this is tremendous. I can't wait to see it. I think we have new blood. I am excited about said new blood. And at least publicly, at least outwardly, you guys are saying the same thing. In a poll I posted yesterday that got a boat ton of votes, here's what I said. The Final Four consists of a 4 seed, 2 5 seeds, and a 9 seed. It was the first time in the history of the tournament that not a single number 1 seed made it even to the Elite Eight. And now it's the first time in NCAA history that neither a 1, 2, or 3 seed has made the Final Four. Why?
As me, the fan of the little guy, I am in hog heaven with this Final Four. Love it.
So very basic question for you guys as we get the party started here. Is this good for college basketball? No 1s, no 2s, no 3s, a 4 seed, 2 5 seeds, and a 9 seed. Is this good for college basketball? And will you watch a Final Four that doesn't include blue blood brands? Will you watch a Final Four that doesn't include the Kansases, the North Carolinas, the Dukes of the world, the UCLAs of the world, the Kentuckys of the world? Well, thus far, 90.2% say it's great for basketball, and I will watch. Only 9.8% are saying it's bad for basketball, and I won't watch.
I'm going to let you in on a little secret, Mark. Those brands don't mean as much when the players on the teams are unrecognizable. We bring it up all the time. We don't know any of these guys on these teams anymore. NIL, transfer portal, one and done. It's a completely new team. year in and year out. Now, the fan of the team will know their team. Of course they will. But how would you expect somebody living in Greenville, South Carolina, to know the stars on UCLA's team or to know the stars on Kansas's team? You wouldn't, because it's a new team year over year. I think that the transfer portal is going to neutralize a lot of the power that some of these big brands have as far as their ability to command an audience.
San Diego State over Creighton yesterday. I have become a San Diego State stan. You might as well call me Aztec Mark.
San Diego State.
That's right, which means a Wales woohoo. But I have become a major San Diego State stan, in part because they're the team that upset Furman, and then in part because nobody across the country believes in this team. Diesel, I combined 3 different analytical ratings over the weekend. Okay, I discussed this on the CBS show, and I looked at the ESPN College Basketball Power Index, their percentage chances. I looked at the 538 projections, and then I looked at our guys Kelly Ford's projections. Percentage chance that each of the Elite 8 teams wins a national championship. San Diego State was 5th out of 8 teams. They had a 9% chance to win the national championship when the Elite 8 began. Who was first? Texas. Where are they right now? Gonzo. They had a 26% chance. UConn was 2nd. Gonzaga was 3rd. Creighton was 4th, right? Everybody continues to crap on, to sleep on this team. And you look at this team, and it is the best team in the country, San Diego State, at getting you to play their game. Alabama and Creighton both average over 80 points a game. Alabama scored 64. Creighton scored 56. They averaged 60 against San Diego State. And I love watching a team that is viewed as a mid-major team being able to take these 4- and 5-star players completely out of what they want to do. They want to look pretty. Hey, everybody, the pretty girls are watching. Come look at me, right?
And we thought that team was going to be Virginia. That was going to be the team that was supposed to be able to make you do what you wanted them to do. And they got bounced in the first round by our Furman Paladins.
That's right. And then we're watching this. And Coach Kelsey at Charleston said, man, I'm just one man, but let me tell you, San Diego State is better than a 5 seed. Okay. Then we watched them play against Furman. And what do we say? Ay caramba, that team is better than a 5 seed. So I think it's cool that the team that beat Furman went to the Final Four. It'll be even cooler if they are able to win the national championship, because, like, you can say to yourself, if you're a fan of the little guy in our area, well, how far would have Furman gotten had they not had to play San Diego State? Look, Alabama and Creighton, you can tell by how closely they played San Diego State, they're better than Furman. But if San Diego State hadn't been in the path, maybe they do make the Sweet 16. Maybe they do make the Elite 8. And I love this team that is not supposed to be there, kind of bloodying and bruising all of the pretty boys in college basketball right before our eyes. I can't think of a game, ladies and gentlemen, in the last 10 years in the tournament that I enjoyed as much as San Diego State beating Alabama. You know, I talked about it on the show, Diesel. I said, I've got 2 upset bets. If one of them wins, I win the bet. I've got Princeton over Creighton. That didn't happen. I got San Diego State over Alabama. That did happen. And it was like you were able to see the car crash come that no one else was able to see.
Well, and Alabama should have been a darling team. You know, should have been that team that's not a traditional power, that we've seen them slowly, steadily rise over the years. Now, I'm sure a little bit of that Darth Vader complex would have transferred over from the football program to the basketball team. But if you can compartmentalize those things, we should have all felt good about Alabama getting to this point. But then, of course, all the situation with the tragic circumstances down there in Tuscaloosa have just put a big giant X on this team. We wanted to see them lose, and it felt so good.
We did, and they lost, and it was amazing. And I commend San Diego State for doing the dirty work of America and getting the corrupt and fraud Alabama Crimson Tide out of the tournament. Texter says, I watched the Elite 8 without the Blue Bloods. Texter says, yes, it's awesome. and I'm watching more this year than ever. We see some comments coming in on YouTube as well. Texter says, while parity is great for college basketball, and there have been some good games, with no major names and not knowing hardly any of the players involved, I will flip the channel to watch here and there Saturday night, and I would rather watch WWE WrestleMania on Saturday. Boy, that's how bad the tournament is to this guy.
Yeah.
He'd rather watch wrestling.
You need to stop listening to Colin Cowherd. You need to stop listening to these talking heads who tell you that if a handful of select brands are not in it, that it's not watchable.
So let's tackle this, okay? Because very, very clearly, all of the upsets winning is not for everybody. Here is Colin Cowherd on this very subject right after Furman beat San Diego State. And I bring this back because it focuses right on the topic at hand.
This is how rough it is for the NCAA tournament. Do you know what the standalone game is to start Saturday NCAA tournament? It's nationwide game for everybody. Furman against San Diego State.
Everybody,
that's the standalone game. Like,
everybody always wants the upset, but then you're stuck with Furman. What you want is a couple of 8-9 upsets, an occasional 5-12. You want the 1, 2, 3, and 4s to win. It's good for ratings. They have huge fan bases. Also, do you really want a Duke, an Arizona, a UCLA, a Kentucky? You really want to bounce first weekend? Those are big brands that everybody's got an emotional, historic connection to.
Well, Diesel, full confessional. I love Colin, and I love his show. This is one of my least favorite takes of him of all time.
It's patently un-American.
You like Colin less. Why?
America is the underdog. That's what we are. That's why this country exists, because we were the scrappy underdogs. If people like Colin Cowherd were around at the time, they'd say, oh, well, do we really need another country on this planet, or should this just be England number 2? Wouldn't it be better if we had just more England all across the world? I can't stand this take from Colin Cowherd.
A 4 seed, 2 5 seeds, and a 9. I thought this was interesting. And look, Diesel, it's going to be really hard for me to root for San Diego State, because who are they playing? Florida Atlantic, an even bigger darling than they are, right? Like just the perfect combination of all that can go right. Florida Atlantic, are you kidding me with what that team has been able to do?
The one wild caveat to Florida Atlantic's story is they are moving to the American Athletic. So as a result of all their wins in the NCAA tournament, all these tournament credits, which translates into money for the conference, the other conference mates are going to get that money. Like, they're on their way out. They'll get it for a year because they're still in the league, but those credits and that money is doled out over time. So they're only going to get a fraction of what they deserve by earning their way this deep and winning this many games into the NCAA tournament.
But they've been hella fun to watch.
Yeah.
And dude, everyone's like, okay, you beat the 8 seed, big deal. A 9 can beat an 8. They said, okay, you got lucky in the second round. You beat Fairleigh Dickinson, massive Dickinson. You beat them, but they were a 16 seed. Look at what they've done since then. They beat Tennessee, who is the team that bludgeoned Duke. They beat Kansas State, who has been everyone's favorite team of the tournament, right? Like, Kansas State has been as legit a team in this tournament as you could possibly have, and they beat them going down to the wire. I can continue to say I don't think they have the girth and the strength for San Diego State, but at this point, the hell do I know, right? What the hell do I know at this point? Texter on the text line about parity for college basketball. Coming up next on the show, I thought this was fascinating. CBS's 60 Minutes did a special on the inner workings of college basketball, how NIL has changed the landscape. And as you might imagine, Charles Barkley, best analyst in sports television history, had some strong opinions on this. We will also hear from the new NCAA president on this and so much more, all on the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. It's Offsides, Mark, Ryan, and Diesel, and we are the Fan Upstate. It's Offsides. Mark, Ryan, and Diesel. We are the Fan Upstate. Wonderful to have you guys with us. Truly do appreciate you making us part of your day. Back to college basketball in a minute, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate all the texts coming in on that. Go Lady Gamecocks, best team in South Carolina. So says Thomas. Best team relative to competition, yes. I hope you are not doing one of those things, Thomas, where you think the Lady Gamecocks could beat, say, Furman men's basketball. Because you know that wouldn't happen, right? Right? Like at that level, it wouldn't happen. Now, I know what you're saying. You said, well, Mark, don't you give Michael Stathakis hell for always saying he and 10 guys from the Y, Michael Stathakis says, could beat the U.S. women's national team? That's Michael Stathakis. If you're at the D1 level, you know, man, and I'll tell you who always takes major exception to this, John Harkes, who's the coach of the Greenville Triumph. We had him in studio, and in studio, I said to him, why is our women's team so much better than the men? And he goes, is it really? You want to see what would happen if you put the women's team against the men's and let them play?
I think it's safe to say the women's team is more dominant over female
Sure.
competition on the World Cup stage. Absolutely. But the U.S. women's national team wouldn't beat the men's national team.
No,
It would be a 5 or 6 goal difference.
Diesel, I think it'd be a double-digit goal difference, maybe by halftime. It would be that bad. So another texter says, we don't listen to Colin Bleep.
Turd.
Folks,
Turd is the word.
there is about a month or so ago, I was invited into a Clemson fan direct message room on Twitter. Okay, it's like Clemson Tigers stuff, and they invited me in. And what was cool is I saw them saying in the room, there's no way he's going to join. There's no way he's going to join. There's no way he's going to join, because they invited me to come in on their chat. And then I popped in there, and they were like, I can't believe this guy's in, and whether they have run smack on me in the past or whatever, they're cool guys. It's cool. They have a conversation. I get to see, in terms of what is on their front burner. And a couple weeks ago, I saw these guys chiming in on something that I thought was really interesting, because you really listen when a Clemson fan is willing and able to be critical of their own program, right? Like when Chris Phillips is critical of the Gamecocks, that's when he really has my ear, because it's kind of for us, by us, right? It's like, who knows you better than yourselves? And in this, it's like a Twitter group that's in a direct message, and they literally message all day long. And, a couple times a day, I'll open it up. I'll look, see if there's anything I can add to their conversation. And they have a major beef with what their program is doing, with what their football program is doing. And they are tired and over all of the Dabo Sweeney hires from within, the former players, the Dabo family kind of hire, the extend the olive branch, the Clemson guy. He's a Clemson guy, Diesel. The fans that are speaking, they believe privately. Who knows? I might be kicked out of the group by the time this show is over. They think privately the thing that is really de-striping them as Tigers are all of the hires from within from Dabo Sweeney. They are especially bent about the wide receiver group, Tyler Grisham. They're not overly thrilled with the running back group, CJ Spiller. Some could make the case that Clemson has better players at the running back position than the production would show, right? Some might say you got five-star starting running back. You're getting kind of 4-star production there.
It seems to me that having the feel-good, everybody loves them type of guys coming back into your program makes them great salesmen. It makes them great recruiters, right? Because they love the program. They get to talk about the program to prospective recruits from a place of love, from this is how much it meant to me to be here. And that's a fantastic sales tactic. When it's an outsider, you know, I mean, think about Garrett Riley trying to sell Clemson football on recruits in the future. I mean, hey, he may still be an elite recruiter. He may still know exactly what to say to get somebody to sign on the dotted line. However, he's not a Clemson guy, so he can't sell it from that true insider's perspective. Again, that doesn't mean that you have to be a true insider to be able to sell your program, but it makes you better at selling your program to be an insider. You know what it doesn't do? It doesn't make you an elite coach. And that's the problem.
Dabo believes that he can bring everybody up through the ranks, and under his watch and under his tutelage, this guy is going to be elite. I thought this was interesting. One of the guys in this chat on Twitter is a guy who started his own media company. It's called Clemson Sports Media. They had Tom Luganville on. Diesel, you and I had Tom Luganville on recently as well. And they asked Tom Luganville, what do you think about the hiring of Garrett Riley, and what impact do you think he has on this Clemson offense? Because Garrett Riley is very clearly not a Clemson guy. Clemson fans were saying, hallelujah, praise the Lord. He went outside of the family for this hire.
Go get the best coach available, not the most okay coach because he spent 4 or 5 years here.
And by the way, South Carolina wanted Garrett Riley. And if you ever see Shane Beamer, let him know that we say that he wanted Garrett Riley. Okay. I think Coach Riley is going to bring a different tempo and upbeat pace to the offense, Tom Luganville says. You're going to see a lot of backfield action. They're going to spread the field horizontally and vertically to create space in the run game within the box. It is a tried and true college scheme that has been successful everywhere it's been employed, and it is very quarterback friendly. Make no mistake, this isn't the air raid. They will want to run the football. Great. I mean, I can't wait to see what this is like. I can't wait to see it. Like, you know, would a guy like Joseph Ngata, who is a borderline draftable player, Diesel, 7th round to undrafted, is that going to be the guy that kicks himself for not coming back? Because maybe he has a 100-yard receiving year, 1,300 yards receiving if he comes back. But
transferring has consequences.
Garrett Riley, yeah, and Garrett Riley is, look, exactly the kind of coach that Clemson fans wanted, exactly the kind of coach that Clemson needed, and I credit Dabo for doing that. But at the same token, folks, I always want to like bring you into how this relates to what we do. I can't tell you how much pressure there is on program directors in our business to hire local talent. I can't tell you how much pressure there is to do that. Okay? I'm not so sure that the pressure comes from Dabo, comes from others on Dabo. I think Dabo inherently chooses local talent, but in every industry, right? Like there is a favoritism shown to local talent. One of the first things I ever said to my current boss, okay, was, look, I know you're going to get a lot of pressure to hire somebody local for this position. You're going to have a lot of pressure to hire somebody local. My first ever conversation with him, this was November 1st, 2018, about this job. You're going to have a ton of pressure to hire locally here. If you have the balls to hire the best host for the job, regardless of where that host is, and if you give that host 6 months to learn the market, then you're going to have the best host moving forward for a period of years. Now, you can debate, ladies and gentlemen, whether or not we are the best show, whether or not I am the best host. But I got the sense at the time that point resonated with him. And he said to me, Mark, you don't even have to worry about that. I have the guts to hire outside the market if I feel the out-of-market host is the best person for the job.
It's also a hell of a risk to question your boss's huevos. Because I tried that once with a prospective job opportunity, and it did not work.
No, it was really a swing for the fence move, Diesel. It was really, but interesting.
I was like, he's either going to love me or he's never going to call me again.
Diesel, both of the times I've done that, I've ended up getting the job. So it's really odd how that works. One was in Tampa, and the guy said, I want more than a guy who just gets on the air and talks sports. That's what he said. I said, if that is the description you want, that is me. So you can hire somebody else and you can hire the wrong guy, or you can make the right decision and hire me. And he chose me. And then I did a very similar thing with our boss here, and he chose me, and he had the guts to go outside the market and hired me out of Houston, Texas. And let me tell you, Diesel, there are still people who do not like me in this market because they wanted the job and they didn't get the job. They were still bent that my boss didn't hire the quote unquote boring local hire, right? They're still bent about that. The same, Dabo Swinney goes through this stuff every single day. He goes through this stuff and he's got like the internal pressures and he wants to hire the local guy, right? And when you have the guts to break free from that Clemson family, what you're getting is new ideas in the program, which we all need, Diesel. We need new ideas.
Yeah.
We need fresh ideas.
You need no men around you sometimes to tell you when you're doing the wrong things. I listen to a lot of podcasts about serial killers and cult leaders and stuff like that. And every single one of the cult leaders has a system in place to punish the people who don't automatically agree with them. And I'm not calling Dabo Swinney a cult leader, but I'm saying that he maybe shares a little bit of that mentality of I want people around me that will give me unquestioned loyalty. It's all about loyalty, family, instead of outside ideas. What's going to give us the absolute best possible chance of winning, of doing something that opposing defenses are not going to expect us to do?
Is it that Dabo Swinney wants yes men around him? Is it that Dabo Swinney feels comfortable with his own guys? Whatever the case may be, Garrett Riley was the little blue pill, is the little blue pill for this football program that had become stale, outdated, right? It had started to become those things. Now you wonder, are all these receivers that transferring, declaring for the draft early, are they going to regret this decision? Because now you're going to have a high-flying offense at Clemson. And what those folks who are in the group that I'm in, like they said, come and join our chat, Mark. By the way, I ran smack on them last week, Diesel, because Florida's women's team in basketball beat Clemson's women's team in basketball in the WNIT. And I said, yeah, that's right. I will run smack about the WNIT because that's all I got. That's all. It's a dark day for a Florida fan, man. I will run smack. They're like, oh, you're a Florida grad. Crap. Yeah, Florida grad. What they want more than anything, and they think they're speaking in private until I share this with the entire upstate, is they want new ideas. They want Dabo to stop showing the nepotism to the Clemson family. They want that to stop. They want new ideas, fresh ideas, the best coach at every position. They specifically mentioned Mike Reed as a guy they're unhappy with. They specifically mentioned Tyler Grisham, the wide receivers coach, as a guy they're unhappy with. And they specifically mentioned CJ Spiller as the guy that they're keeping on close watch. Okay? Close watch. So
I think the word is life support.
That's it. 71307 on the text line is where you can get to us. So when we come back on the show, how is college basketball being affected by name, image, and likeness? And what do the power brokers, what do those with major sway have to say about the lay of the land in college basketball right now? We'll get to that, your thoughts, and so much more here on the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. It's Offsides, Mark Ryan and Diesel. And we are the Fan Upstate. Here's what's coming up on the show. Our media mock draft continues at 4 o'clock p.m. It's the Seattle Seahawks on the clock. At 4:20, we will take your final votes for the non-sports bracket that we will do this year. At 4:40, Chris Phillips joins us from the Spurs Up Show. What would be his game plan to beat his own team? We will tackle that at 4:40 p.m. with Chris Phillips today. Then the top 5 at 5. Fantastic to have you guys with us here on a Monday.
And the answer cannot be to put Michael Stathakis on your team in drag. Cannot be the answer.
Hey, by the way, Texter says, Mark, LOL at Stathakis and some Y scrubs thinking they can push the Lady Gamecocks. Who's checking Boston down low? Texter, believe it or not, they didn't say that about the Lady Gamecocks. It was even worse. They said it about pros, okay? They said Stathakis said he and 10 guys from the upstate, randos from the upstate, could beat the U.S. women's national team in soccer, okay? I mean, that's the funniest thing I've ever heard in my life.
This is a guy that fries bologna for a living. You think he could get up and down the field more than 3 times without wheezing and doubling over, vomiting on the field?
Hilarious, right?
Oh, I'd pay to see that.
Absolutely hilarious. So I'm sure if he felt like he could beat pros, he also feels like they could beat the Lady Gamecocks. But specifically, that's not what he mentioned. Okay, guys. So this was interesting. 60 Minutes did a special last night on what's going on with college basketball, how the game has changed, how and name, image, and likeness is affecting it, etc. And they got the opinion of one Sir Charles Barkley, who was never short on opinion. Here's Sir Charles on this.
It's a travesty and a disgrace. I'm so mad now how we can mess up something that's so beautiful.
How do we mess it up?
We can't pay all these players. In the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to have 25 schools that's going to dominate the sports because they can afford players. And these schools who can't afford or won't pay players are going to be irrelevant.
The words of one Charles Barkley. So I did think that was interesting. I did think that was interesting. And we also I have Diesel the TV clip of that, which is kind of the same thing that might not be quite as distorted.
No, that's a sound card issue from the computer. It's not.
Oh, gotcha.
It's not the file.
Gotcha. Okay, I got you. So you hear Charles Barkley says it's a travesty. It's a disgrace. We're 3 to 5 years away from only 25 programs being relevant.
He says this as we've got none of the big brands in the NCAA tournament, and so many small mid-majors have made deep, deep runs in this tournament. So it's almost like Charles's words have been proven wrong right in front of his face.
Well, he says Diesel in the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
so I think where he could be wrong is that I think the transfer portal is helping the parity situation. The transfer portal is increasing the parity that we're seeing, right?
Well, my fear is that the transfer portal will help the mid-majors, and it'll also help on the football side with the group of 5 schools. And you'll see more and more of these upsets to the point that the power brands will say, well, we don't want the potential to be upset by these teams anymore, so we're just going to stop playing them, which you and I both know, in the words of Cam Smith, you're supposed to drop your nuts and go out there and play the game and win the damn game, right? You should be so good. You have probably 10 times their athletic budget or more every single year. You have more money for coaching staff. You have more money for stadiums and training facilities. If you still can't beat a group of 5 program, that says more about you than it does them.
And every once in a while, the group of 5 just gets a special group of players. I mean, I think that's the case with Florida Atlantic. They've been great all year. And if they hadn't won their conference tournament, there was a debate that they might miss the tournament. Think about that. A lot of teams can beat other teams when you don't ever see them, but it's the easiest for their own conference to beat them because their own conference knows them like the back of their hand.
That's why I want the rules to change. I think every conference should get 2 teams in the tournament. Now, if the same team wins the regular season championship and their conference tournament championship, that opens up an at-large.
In that scenario, Diesel, how do you disincentivize tanking? Hey, Furman, do what's good for the league. You won the regular season tournament.
That's a difficult thing.
Right.
I think that's where you start seeing certain incentives going up for the coaching staff to go out there and win these tournament games. It's, the league may call you up and say, hey, Bob, we really need you to lose this game so we can get a second team in. However, the university is saying, hey, Bob, if you win this game, there's a fat $500,000 in it for you, something like that. That's going to be the only way. And these coaches already have incentive packages in place. Everything that they achieve, they get money for. You win your regular season, here's a bonus. You go out and you win your conference tournament, here's a bonus. You graduate this many players, here's a bonus. You do this many radio and television hits, here's a bonus. So these guys are already getting bonus for this anyway. You just change the structure and you change the dollar figure to disincentivize them from losing to get an extra team in the NCAA tournament.
So what Charles Barkley says on that clip is in the next 3 to 5 years. And if you say, well, Mark, I thought 20 to 25 teams dominated college basketball anyway, you could be right. But I think he's saying those are the only teams you're ever going to hear from are the same 20 to 25 because of what the NIL era is doing. And he said, look, we can't pay players. No one can afford to be able to pay players and run a team and run a ship. And so you're going to be having 90% of the sports either unable or unwilling to make the payment schedule to be able to be competitive. So the new president of the NCAA, Charlie Baker, was asked about this. In this clip, you will hear Greg Gumbel and Clark Kellogg talking to Charlie Baker about what to do about this mess. And then at the tail end of it, you have Charles Barkley chiming in yet again.
Baker, who officially assumed his position earlier this month. Clark and I spoke with him earlier, asked about his number one priority moving forward.
Well, there is this basketball tournament that landed just about the same time I landed. I think the other thing I would speak to specifically is trying to create some what I would call consumer protections for families and student athletes around name, image, and likeness, which one of the ADs referred to as the only thing that's true about it at this point is everybody lies. So I would love to create some transparency and accountability around that so that families actually know what they're getting into. And I would really like to see some sort of uniform standard contract so that when somebody signs it, they know they're signing the same kind of agreement everybody else is signing.
And in that, along those lines, how do you anticipate that being done and accomplished going forward?
Well, there's a couple opportunities there. One is obviously we're going to talk some with the folks in Washington about this, and there's a fair amount of appetite to try to deal with this. They've been hearing from a lot of the same people I've been hearing from. But I think it's incumbent on the NCAA to also develop a program that we believe we could implement if the feds can't actually put something together on their own. The only problem with it is if the feds do it, all 50 states comply. If we do it, we have to perhaps nudge some states and their collegiate programs into participating because they may have state laws that don't require that they play.
Chuck, you're shaking your head.
Did he say we're going to ask the politicians to help us? See, that pisses me off already. Our politicians are awful people. As I talked to Clark earlier, because I asked him about y'all conversation, I would actually go to people who actually care about basketball, not looking at it just themselves. I would put a committee together. I would love for Clark to be on the committee, get some coaches, get some players, and let's try to work this thing out. We can't ask these politicians nothing. Those people are awful people. Democrats and Republicans, they're all crooks.
Man, I've never wanted a sports figure to run for politics more than I want Charles Barkley to run for politics. Because he's the guy who says, man, all politicians are terrible. They're useless. They don't get anything done. Everybody on both sides sucks. They don't know what they're talking about most of the time. I love Charles Barkley.
The moral of the story is, folks, that, I love Charles. He's not always right. He has a book that's called I May Be Wrong, But I Doubt It. He's not always right, but I think for the most part, he's right here. And you're hearing from the president of the NCAA saying, look, we can come out with policies on our own. The problem is then the individual states' laws take precedence. And when the individual states' laws take precedence, then what you have is a scenario where all the best recruits can go to the same state because the laws are better there. They can make more money there. So he's saying if the feds do this, then everybody's got to listen. And the real thing that he didn't mention is that if the feds do this, if an athlete wants to sue, guess who they're suing? They're not suing the NCAA. They're suing the feds, right? That's the big difference here. The NCAA is scared bleepless to get sued again. So if the feds are responsible for doing this, you're going to sue the feds. The athletes are going to sue the feds instead.
Is this what we really want? A bunch of 17, 18, 19, 20-year-olds suing the federal government?
Right. So, but what's really happening, folks, behind the scenes, if you're wondering why is this taking so long, etc., initially, the NCAA foolhardily thought they could maintain the amateurism model. Okay, so they didn't come out with rules and regulations and guidelines of their own. Then they got sued and they said, whoa, we lost a lot of money on that. That can't happen again. So you have the feds and the NCAA passing the buck and the responsibility back between entities. The NCAA doesn't want to step in it. The federal government doesn't want to step in it. And you have no one really willing to take accountability because no one really wants to get sued. Pathetic, isn't it? This is the America we live in today, ladies and gentlemen. It's the America we live in today. Up next, we have got our media mock draft continuing with one of my mentors in the business. Cannot wait for this. It's next, right here in the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. It's Offsides, Mark, Ryan, and Diesel, and we are the Fan Upstate. I got to tell you guys, I'm so excited about this because rare is the day that I get to talk to one of my mentors in this business. I've had two over my career, right? And I'm incredibly blessed. Chad Scott is the former executive producer of The Herd with Colin Cowherd. He has been a mentor of mine in my career, as has Owen Murphy, who was executive producer of The Dan Patrick Show, is a current ESPN radio producer. So ESPN flies him all over the country. When a game is national on ESPN radio, he's there. He is running the ship. And he produces for KEXP, which is a badass independent radio station in Seattle. And he is the lead singer of the awesome up-and-coming rock band New Age Healers. So if you like what you hear when you hear our show, ladies and gentlemen, okay, give Owen all the credit. If you don't like what you hear when you listen to this show, realize that he is also somewhat principally responsible for that, having coached me for a number of years. And he joins us right now on the line, Owen Murphy. Great to catch up with you, my friend. How are you? What's good?
Oh, my gosh. I'm so sorry to everybody. Mark, it's absolutely my fault. You know, every dumb thing out of his mouth, I taught him. Took him all the way to the bottom.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Exactly right. How's life treating you, man? What's good?
Oh, terrible. I'm on a sports radio show right now. The worst it could possibly be. This is unbelievably bad.
Yeah.
No, it's awesome. Everything's great. Gosh, my friend Mark invited me to come on a show and make a pick for the Seattle Seahawks, which cracks me up, by the way. So you have to keep in mind here, I'm never home on a Sunday. I'm at an NFL game somewhere. I've seen about 3 Seahawks games this year. I live here. I sure enjoy them most of the time, but you know, I had to do some research this morning. I'll just say that much.
Well, I'll tell you what, you're about to make a better pick than they have in recent history, Owen. And it's interesting because I know that they're interested in the quarterback that played at my alma mater, Anthony Richardson, who is about as raw as sushi, Owen. But he went with the previous pick.
I got it. He went with the previous pick.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry. What team picked Anthony Richardson?
The Indianapolis Colts at number 4.
Oh my God! Fire that GM or the media person who picked them. Oh my God! The kid can't throw. I'm sure he can dunk a basketball. I know he's fast as can be. He can't throw. And last I checked, I could be mistaken here, but I'm pretty sure that throwing the ball accurately in the NFL is a really important distinction when you have someone under center. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, I know what you're saying. I 100% know what you're saying. And there have been 2 quarterbacks with a worse completion percentage who have gone in the first round. Their names, Kyle Bowler and Jake Locker. How did they work out in the National Football?
Didn't work out so well.
No, not so well at all. But
I mean, Kyle Bowler sure could throw the ball a long ways on his knees, so that's something. If you ever have a play where you throw 70 yards on your knees, what are you talking about? My God.
You watched, Owen, you're just like me, man. I make fun of this. We play the song We're Men in Tights because of all of this stupid nonsense surrounding these pro days and the combine and how these teams fall for this stuff every single year. Anthony Richardson is an athletic wonder. I marveled at some of his exploits, and then I marveled at how he couldn't beat Vanderbilt, Owen. You know?
Yeah, I know. I mean, did he have a good game this year? Not really. If you look at all the games, it's not that strong. The funny thing is, though, is that, maybe he's the next Josh Allen, I mean, Josh Allen, statistically looking, was mediocre as can be in college. Of course, he wasn't playing with anybody, but he also wasn't playing against anybody. But, if he's not the best quarterback in the NFL, he's right there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course. But the thing is, Owen, if your neck is on the line, do you want to risk it on the exception or the rule? Right? There's always an exception. But I don't know if I could pull that trigger.
Yeah, I always think you take the best player available, regardless of what your needs are, because you never know what your needs are going to be. And I'm saying this within reason. Of course, there's exceptions to this, but every single year, players get injured who you didn't expect to be injured. And if you had depth there, then you'd be in a much better position, right? And then you also have trade value for guys if you get a little overstacked at one position. I mean, the Green Bay Packers back in the day did it with quarterback. They traded Matt Hasselbeck. They traded the guy who played for the Carolina Panthers. I can't remember now. Well, they had Brett Favre, and then they drafted Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre. And I mean, that worked out amazingly well. So, I say most of the time, even I'll make the case today. I say take the best player available. Now, keep in mind, I don't know what I'm talking about.
Well, with the first pick in our media mock draft, the Carolina Panthers, Sheena Quick selected Bryce Young. Second pick, Paul Gallant, Houston Texans selected C.J. Stroud. Third pick, Bo Brask out of Phoenix selected Will Anderson, linebacker out of Alabama. And with the fourth pick, Kevin Hickey, Indianapolis Colts, selected Anthony Richardson, quarterback out of the University of Florida. And ladies and gentlemen, with the number 5 overall selection in the 2023 Offsides Media Mock Draft, the pick is in.
Defensive tackle Jalen Carter from Georgia.
Whoa,
right there.
But there's a ton of questions.
You told me to pick who I thought the Seahawks would take. Okay, even with the character issues, they'll take chances. They took chances on Frank Clark. They've taken chances on other guys in the past. I'm telling you right now, they'll take him. And again, I want to reiterate, I have no idea what I'm talking about.
Well, I appreciate that. And that is a pick, Owen, that a lot of teams are salivating on. I spoke to Trevor Sikkema on Saturday night from Pro Football Focus, and he said in his talks, he's like, you'd be surprised the name Jalen Carter isn't falling down draft boards as much as you might think. Was in the accident that involved a staffer and a teammate dying, then lied about his participation in that speeding. It is an absolute disgrace. There's a number of people. I wouldn't fault teams who take him from his draft board. But you're right. I said to Owen, guys, I said, Owen, I want you to do what I think, what you think Seattle's going to do with this position. And you're getting the guy that before all this stuff was number 1 on everybody's draft board. Where has Seattle not been good? Right up the middle of that defense. That's been the issue, Owen.
Yeah, and I do look, if one of these quarterbacks already been taken, except for Richardson, for God's sakes, falls, they'll take a quarterback, because when are they going to ever be this high in the draft again to get a game-changing quarterback that they can, coach up over a few years? And I wouldn't be surprised with the 20th pick if they take Tanner McKee from Stanford, or a player like that. He's got a rocket for an arm. He's accurate can be. He's a little timid in his decision-making, but that may be a function of having nobody around him and being in trouble all the time, So that's how I see their draft going.
By the way, Owen, Geno Smith had the line of the year last year when he said, "They wrote me off, but I ain't right back." He's talking about everybody. And true to form, nobody saw them making the playoffs. How did that happen? How are we wrong about Geno Smith, or were we wrong about Geno Smith all this time?
I don't think we were that wrong. So I did 2 Seahawks games here, so I saw him up close. I think he's a decent quarterback, but he's a middling quarterback. You're never going to win I don't want to say never, but it's unlikely that you'll ever win a Super Bowl with Geno Smith under center, right? And look at the second half of this year. It just wasn't that strong. He started off gangbusters, had some great games, but he was pretty mediocre at the end. And even in the playoffs, he was missing throws high. I don't know. It's a lot of money for a guy. And look, they didn't have a choice. Frankly, if I'm them, I'm thinking about trading for Lamar Jackson.
Owen, how has the temperature changed within the Seattle Seahawks organization, or has it changed at all, especially with Pete Carroll, with all of the Russell Wilson wanted him fired. He made moves to get him fired. A lot of times when that happens, especially when you're talking about megalomaniacs and cult leaders, not saying that Pete Carroll is one of those, they tend to have get a tighter and tighter and more insular group. Have you seen anything like that where loyalty above all means everything to Pete Carroll?
Well, I don't know about all that. I will say this: they must have known something, because they let him go to the Broncos. They make the trade. It's an incredible trade, right? He just absolutely bleeps the bed all year long. We're talking about Russell Wilson. I wouldn't be surprised if he bounced back, but they knew something that we didn't know, and so all credit to them. And you get the sense behind the scenes that Russell Wilson wasn't necessarily the guy that you thought he was. And we've heard, rumblings from players who left the team, saying as much, that maybe he's kind of a goody he's kind of Eddie Haskell, goody two shoes up front, but not maybe that guy behind the scenes. I don't know for sure. He sure was fun to watch, and frankly, I sure hope he has a great year next year for the Broncos. But I think you challenged Pete Carroll and you lost. That's kind of embarrassing. But then you made $300 million doing so it's not all that bad.
I don't want to bury the lead, Owen, on what you just said. You said, look, if I were Seattle, I would trade for Lamar Jackson. It's going to take a couple first-round picks. You've got a couple of first-round picks.
I'd give both first rounders. I'd give that second rounder too to get Lamar Jackson.
And where do you come out, Owen, on that? Because it's weird. Like, we're not supposed to be Switzerland on sports radio, right? We're supposed to have big opinions on this. But I get why Lamar Jackson can look at Deshaun Watson's deal and say, I'm better than that guy. On the flip side, I can see why Baltimore would say, this is why we left Cleveland. This is why we're better than Cleveland. We don't do dumb things like that. We're not going to make a bad business decision like Cleveland did. And then it seems like there is an element of collusion where no one in the NFL wants to do what Cleveland did and give this fully guaranteed deal.
Well, so I don't get the Ravens' point of view on this. And, maybe you know more than I do. But it strikes me Lamar Jackson is a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, and you can't win without a quarterback in the NFL. He's a record-setting, game-changing, difference-making with his legs and his arms. He's almost like a better, more consistent Michael Vick, who has led you to tons of wins over the years. None of it makes any sense to me. If I'm the GM, or I'm the president of the Ravens, and it's Lamar Jackson or the coach whose name has escaped me at the moment,
John Harbaugh.
Thank you very much. Singing his brother. I'm taking Lamar Jackson. That's just me.
Owen Murphy, ESPN.
Mark Ryan.
ESPN radio producer on KEXP, and lead singer of New Age Healers, folks. Check them out. Outstanding New Age rock group. Great catching up with you, pal. Thanks so much.
All right, brother. Take care.
All right. Owen Murphy, one of my mentors. Great to catch up with him. He's going for it. He's swinging for it. He's going Jalen Carter. He is going Lamar Jackson. If if it's up to him, he's making the trade. He's getting Lamar Jackson. What do you make about that? 71307 on the text line is where you can get to us on the show. And up next, a very special question for you that only takes off with your response. That's on the flip side. Here on the show that gives you both sides. It's Offsides. Mark Ryan and Diesel. And we are the Fan Upstate. Offsides, Mark, Ryan, and Diesel. We are the Fan Upstate. Fantastic to have you guys with us. The big news from today is that Lamar Jackson earlier today went on Twitter, and what was interesting about this, and he showed that it was personal, which you never want it to be personal, right? But here's what he said 5 hours ago today, 10:48 a.m. A letter to my fans. You see what he's doing here as well? By starting with a letter to the fans, he's already pitting himself as the martyr and the team as the villain.
Yeah,
right?
he's pitting the fan base against the team.
Exactly. A letter to my fans. I want to thank all of you for the love and support you consistently show toward me. All of you are amazing, and I appreciate y'all so much. I want you all to not believe everything you read about me. Let me personally answer your questions. In regards to my future plans, as of March 2nd, I requested a trade from the Ravens organization, for which the Ravens have not been interested in meeting my value. Any and everyone that's met me or been around me know I love the game of football, and my dream is to help a team win the Super Bowl. You all are great, but I had to make a business decision that was best for my family and I. No matter how far I go or where my career takes me, I'll continue to be close to my fans of Baltimore Flock Nation and the entire state of Maryland. You'll see me again. So what do we get out of that? That he requested a trade on March 2nd. What else do we get out of that? That he is trying to be on the side of the fan and start a mutiny against the ownership. And finally, what did we get out of that? When did he release that? The 5 W's, right? He released that right before his coach, John Harbaugh, was set to speak, known by Lamar Jackson, so that his head coach had to address it and had to address it publicly, which is another sign that this has gotten nasty and this has gotten personal. Folks, I can't honestly tell you in good faith and good conscience. I don't necessarily feel the same way as I do as Owen Murphy. You do need a quarterback to win. The problem is Lamar Jackson is never healthy. The best ability is availability. You can't make the club in the tub. And Lamar Jackson has not been available to play in 13 of Baltimore's last 22 games. So he wants a fully guaranteed contract, yet he's offered no guarantees that he's going to be available. Guarantee my money. Can you guarantee you'll play? No, but guarantee my money. Honey? No, like it doesn't work that way.
What do you do for money, honey? How do you get your kicks?
So, yeah, this is very clearly an attempt to side with the fans. I'm not the bad guy. They're the bad guy. Because, look, the fans are the vast majority of people. With social media today, fans have more of an influence and an impact than everything else.
He wants his entire fan base tweeting at the program, or tweeting at the franchise, tweeting at the ownership, go into social media. And he wants to try to whip them into a mob mentality of trying to bully the team into giving him what he wants.
But the other thing, Diesel, is this. He's saying the team has not met his value. Let me make sure I get this. I have this correct here. The Ravens have not been interested in meeting my value. Diesel, you know why that's an inaccurate statement? Because he is his own agent. He has no agent. How the hell does he know what his value is? Nobody else around the NFL seems interested in, quote, meeting his value either, because he is his own agent. And there are important things that you need to have an agent for, bonuses and structures. And the agent is the go-between between the team and you. And so what happens is when the team comes back and says, we think you're worth this, the player gets his feelings hurt. The agent is the guy that buffers all of that. He buffers, he communicates between the team and the players so egos don't get involved, so it doesn't get personal. That isn't what happened here at all. So, I'm looking at our text line for today, and I'm seeing people say, well, the Panthers should have traded all of that they gave up for the number 1 pick. They should have traded it for Lamar Jackson. Maybe time will prove that to be prophetic. Maybe you're right. But it is a hell of a lot to ask 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, wide receiver DJ Moore for a guy who's not eligible to play so often. A guy whose size and his style of play renders him unavailable to do that very thing that you're paying him handsomely to do. And paint me the picture of how an organization can be successful with a $220 million salary cap, with one player making $50 million of that $220, and he's unavailable to do his job. Paint me the picture of how you can be successful doing that. I know it sounds like I'm defending Baltimore here, and I think Baltimore's earned our trust. They're one of the best run organizations in all of sports. 71307 on the text line is where you can get to us. Texter says, the elephant in the room on Jackson is those legs that haven't worked a full season the last 2 years. Amen. Hey, Lamar, we'll give you guaranteed money, but I'll guarantee 12 games a year of money. How about that? Because you're not available for the other 5. Texter says, beat Indiana, Houston, and Texas, and still no love for Miami in the Final Four. They've had a good run. Jim Larinaga is a really good, to me, honestly, Texter, why have I not spent time talking about Miami and Texas? That was the most boring of the games to me, honestly. It's like Miami is elevated because of NIL. They paid $400,000 to keep Isaiah Wong. That's why they're elevated. They got a really good head coach. Texas is the highest profiting athletic department in America. That's why they're relevant, even though they lost Chris Beard. Diesel, I was into Creighton and San Diego State. I was really into that. I was into Florida Atlantic. I was into Gonzaga Houston because Drew Timme is just interesting. Miami, Texas didn't do a lot for me. Got to be honest with you.
I love the audience that tries to dictate what we talk about and when we talk about it. Like, Texter, do you not realize how this works?
No, but guys,
it's the same texters who are like, you didn't pick my team to win. You're hating on them.
At the same time, and being totally honest, like, we want to talk about what you guys are most interested in. The Lady Gamecocks play tonight, Maryland. And the line on that game is the Lady Gamecocks by 14.5 points. The Lady Gamecocks were 16 points better than UCLA the other day. And the best part is the games were played right here. And I can't tell you how cool it was to have that game on and to say, Sweet Pea, which is my nickname for my wife. By the way, Diesel, do you have a nickname for Ashley?
Can't say it on the air.
Can't say it on the air? I didn't think so. So I say, Sweet Pea, check this out. And I press pause and I unpause it, and it's all the Falls Park. It's all Falls Park. And I thought it was so awesome for our area, for the upstate, to be like front and center. It's awesome that we have the games and that we're hosting the games. And then it's awesome that, ESPN takes it upon themselves to show all the best parts of our area.
The reason they do that, Mark, is, if you've got somebody that's living in Charleston watching the women's tournament, somebody living in Charlotte, somebody living in Atlanta, and they see that, they're like, dang, Greenville's really come up. They're like, it's been 20 years since I've been to Greenville. I need to go back.
Right.
That place looks great. I want to go check this place out. And they've got a big arena that's hosting these games. I'm planning a road trip.
As you should. Just had friends come up from Florida who were his daughter plays softball in high school. She's batting .520, was touring South Carolina, was touring Clemson. And he said, man, Mark, you got a really nice downtown here. Really nice downtown.
Only thing they need to figure out, Mark, is they need to figure out a lazy river in the Reedy from TR to downtown Greenville. We've been talking about it on this show for years. Yet there are no engineers in the upstate willing to take on that challenge. All you got to do is narrow the river down a little bit, make it rise a little bit higher, and then you can tube right down the river. Lazy river from TR to Greenville. Doesn't that sound awesome?
Do you guys like our idea? By the way, it's Diesel idea. I will claim 50% of it on my own, though. But you
could stop right there at Unity Park where all the breweries are. That's where you get out. That's perfect. What the heck is Greenville doing? Why are we not doing this?
Well, and it would be one of the most unique things you could ever have.
Tube into downtown Greenville.
Right. And then, how awesome would that be? City leaders, are you listening to us? We don't care how much it will cost. But that's the part we haven't figured out that you guys figure out the finances.
Yeah, you tube past the Swamp Rabbit Grocery. That place is awesome. You get out, they'll have a little bite to eat. You hop back in. It's a lazy river. It's not going to take you a long time to float it, or it's going to take you a long time to float it. So you got lots of time. You just stop, have a little beer truck on the side of the river. You go down a little bit farther, have a little taco truck on the side of the river. Come on, Greenville. What are you waiting for?
You know what's interesting to me about these women's tournament games is that the lines for all of these games are like 1 point, 2 point, 3 points. You get to the Gamecocks, 20 points, 14.5 points today over Maryland.
What was really interesting is when I found out that the two very trustworthy twins that played for Miami, the Cavender twins, they have a net worth between them of over $5.5 million, because together they're getting $1.5 million a year in NIL. Very trustworthy. Everything they say, 100% factual and truthful.
That's an inside joke on the show, ladies and gentlemen. In case you're wondering what that means, every time somebody gets Diesel's head to whip around when he's walking, he believes every word out of their mouth. Okay, he finds them incredibly trustworthy. There are identical twins on Miami. They're the Cavender twins.
And they are very attractive.
They are very trustworthy, according to Diesel, but they got very smoked by LSU yesterday, Diesel, 54-42.
I think it's because they were busy looking at the LSU coach's jacket.
Yeah.
Well, the one on Friday, she was wearing a jacket that it looked like the drapes that were in my dad's camper from the 1970s. They're very flowery, very floral drapes, floral printed jacket with these pink fuzzy stripes down the sleeve. Looked like somebody had glued a feather boa to both sleeves of this of the LSU women's basketball coach. She's famous for this, by the way, for wearing really outlandish stuff when she's coaching games, and I love it. It's fantastic PR. It really beats Eric Musselman from Arkansas taking his shirt off after games.
Oh yeah,
really beats that for real.
Well, it's Kim Mulkey, and she's wanted to get noticed, and she's building her brand, and she's not very well liked, Diesel, and she gets smoked by the Gamecocks every time.
She looks like a Karen. She does not look like a nice lady.
No, it doesn't look very nice at all. By the way, you know what's interesting to me about the women's tournament? It is if somebody really challenges the Gamecocks, and that's it. Outside of that, and I know you guys, hey, Mark Ryan, isn't it your job to cover? It's our job to cover interesting topics. And I understand that the Gamecocks' pursuit of greatness is interesting, right? If you give me the greatest margin of victory that has ever existed in women's college basketball, and you tell me that South Carolina has a chance to break that, I think that is somewhat interesting. But when it's just a 20-point beatdown after 20-point beatdown after 20-point beatdown, you're kind of having the same feeling that you do watching Alabama in college basketball and college football. And so I ask you guys, if you are a Lady Gamecock fan, just riddle me this. Honest question seeking an honest answer. Do you want, for just entertainment value's sake, do you want the Gamecocks to be challenged? Do you want them to have a close game? Do you want to be nervous for once? Because if you're not a Gamecock fan, and I'm not, right? It's majorly anticlimactic. Diesel, the team they're playing today, Maryland, is the 2 seed, okay, for the right to go to the Final Four. The 2 seed's record is 28-6. South Carolina's 35-0. This 28-6.
And let me guess, they're 20-point favorites?
14.5.
Oh my God.
14.5 against a 2 seed that is 28-6. I mean, they're double-digit better than everyone else in college basketball.
Maryland's odds are about the odds of Michael Stathakis and 10 dudes playing the U.S. women's national team.
Exactly right. Saturday against UCLA, the score at halftime was 25-15. The score after 3 quarters was 50-30. Never in the game. Like, UCLA is literally never in the contest, never in the game. 71307 on the text line is where you can get to us. Texter says, let's see, Diesel, you'll come out of that river with a tail. He's all aboard the lazy river.
All the pollution is down in the swamp down below. That's where it's all settled and it's reached the bottom. That's why they can't dredge up the lake down below, down at Conisty. But like up in the river part, it's fine. It's flowing water.
Texter says, see, this is where Diesel should know better, frankly, folks, because a texter says tube down the Reedy, one of the most polluted rivers anywhere. Still toxins leaking into the water from all the textile mills who dumped crap straight into that back in the day. Have you read the signs along the river in downtown that tell people not to swim in it?
I love this.
Nope. Hashtag three-eyed fish, Diesel.
I fished those waters. The water smells fine. The fish don't have any mites on them. They're not filthy. Look, people keep saying this. They've been saying this to me since I moved here nearly 20 years ago. Oh, the Reedy's dirty. The Reedy's dirty. The Reedy's dirty. Like, nobody's dumping anything in the water right now, and they haven't been for a while. Where is your research, Texter? How do you know? How do you know? Do you have recent studies that say that the water is filthy? If you do, produce them, and I'm happy to listen. Otherwise, it's just an opinion.
That's what we do, guys. We give you guys ideas. You tell us how dumb we are for said ideas, and we stir it up. But I'm telling you, if you can imagine a clean river through Greenville that you could tube down, and they would have little food trucks along the path that you could get out.
Shut up and take my money.
Right? How much could you charge people to go down that thing? How great would that make it? You'd have something that nobody else has. Nobody else has. You know, Houston, Texas, there's a hotel, there's a rooftop hotel in Houston, Texas, Diesel, that has this badass lazy river pool that is in the shape of Texas. So you go lazy river around the whole shape of Texas.
Love it.
And it's this massive rooftop. And now every time you see Houston, they show you that. How about that? How about something like this lazy river idea that nobody else has? I don't know what that Diesel guy's saying, but he sure does make a lot of sense, doesn't he? We'll talk Lady Gamecocks, and we will hold Chris Phillips' feet to the fire on the Gamecocks next, right here on the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. It's Offsides, Mark, Ryan, and Diesel, and we are the Fan Upstate. You guys are cracking us up here on the text line. Listen, nobody's saying that our lazy river can't be a pool, with a pool bottom, and you just build it for 30 miles. A lazy river that runs parallel to the Swamp Rabbit Trail with food trucks, beer vendors, etc. Best Saturday of your life, right? Texter says, no, Mark, I do not want the Gamecocks to be close to anybody. I want them to beat the hell out of everybody. Diesel, all the homeless people downtown were once normal human beings before they took a dip in the Reedy River. Oh, man. That's the text of the day, Texter. Nicely done. Nicely played. The Reedy River has the nickname Turdy River. The sewer plant is on it. So says JT and Greer. Texter says, my research is that the city of Greenville has deemed it unhealthy. What would the city shut it? Why would the city shut it down without cause? Dumb idea.
They don't want to pay lifeguards.
Texter says, I have no faith in humanity. The lazy river becomes lazy toilet in a month. So you got to have it be a pool. You build the pool. It doesn't have to be naturally occurring. It can be man-made. Texter says, food truck on the Reedy. Just take 2 slices of bread and pick one out of the water for a Reedy poo-poo sandwich. Ew. Texter says, fecal matter, Diesel. Fecal matter. Though the levels of E. coli and fecal
I've never seen a floater.
In the Reedy River do fluctuate.
I have fished the Reedy. I've never seen a floater in there.
Diesel's fished the Reedy, ladies and gentlemen. That explains so much about his personality and his character. He's ingested that stuff. Okay. Texter says, though the levels of E. coli and fecal coliform in the Reedy River to fluctuate, at times testing results show extremely elevated levels of bacteria in the water. Yet we're building a pool. It's going to be built like a chute, and it's going to be lazy, and it's going to take you all the way through. No one's saying you have to float in yesterday's nachos, okay? No one's saying you have to do that, all right? Here we go. Let's get to Chris Phillips, who joins us on the line right now. Owns, runs, and operates the Spurs Up Show. And you can follow him on Twitter at the Spurs Up Show, and he joins us right now on the line. Okay, Chris, calling a spade. You are the Maryland Terrapins tonight. Okay, you are the Maryland Terrapins. Okay, I'm not looking for prey. I'm not looking for hope. I'm looking for, you've seen enough Lady Gamecock basketball. You know how you would play against them. What do? What beats them? What's the game plan that would give them trouble?
Well, Mark, first things first, appreciate you having me on, my friend. Always a pleasure to chat with you. And
sure.
Loved calling into your show, by the way, National CBS Radio on
yeah,
Saturday.
That was fun.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun. Glad that I won nothing, by the way. I appreciate that still. But, no, anyway, speaking of the game tonight, man, I'm glad you bring it up. Obviously, huge game. Gamecocks are a 14.5-point favorite. And, I won't go with the answer like you mentioned of, just ask for hope and forgiveness or prayer, if you will. I mean, I think they got to slow down Aaliyah Boston, right? That's their best player. But, I mean, there's a multitude of ways South Carolina can beat you. The Gamecocks, like we talked about before, Mark, they've been susceptible to slow starts. And I think if you're able to do that, if you're Maryland and kind of muddy up the game a little bit, obviously play great defense down low, like I mentioned, take away Aaliyah Boston. Obviously, Zaya Cook on the outside is a real threat. So, you got to play great defense if you're Maryland for sure and kind of muddy up the game. But, Carolina has shown they've struggled a bit offensively at times. And that UCLA game was low scoring, but the defense obviously showed up and showed out and was really the reason you won that ball game. So I think if you can muddy up the ball game, limit Aaliyah Boston. You're not going to eliminate her, but limit Aaliyah Boston. She's the best player in women's college basketball. And if you can take advantage, if you're Maryland, take advantage of, what we may see another slow start from South Carolina and come out swinging offensively, come out hot, if you will, bring the energy. And I think if you're Maryland, maybe you can find yourself in a game in the third or fourth quarter where it's a one-possession type of game, or maybe you're even in the lead, you're putting the pressure on South Carolina. Because, Mark, let's face it, right, the Gamecocks, they have all the pressure on them. They're the favorite to win it all, right? They're the favorites to win tonight. So I think if you're Maryland, you're sort of playing with house money. Nobody's expecting you to win, and they maybe could use that to their advantage.
Well, what is the best way to defend Aaliyah Boston? You mentioned it, Chris, like, okay, you got to do a great job defending her, and it would seem like you can't really single cover her, but I imagine you're going to give me more than something that's as simple as just a double team. Get the ball out of her hands, right? Because South Carolina's got players that can beat you from the outside. So what is that best plan?
Maybe I'll use the phrase "pray" in this instance. No, I'm just kidding. I think you've got to play physical. You know what I mean? I think a player like that, like you mentioned, you can't just double him the entire game. So, I'm not going to sit here and say I know Maryland's roster up and down and who maybe they have that could match up, because there aren't many women's college basketball in any roster that can. But I think you got to make a player like that uncomfortable. I think you got to get physical. I think you got to be willing to, commit a couple fouls here and there and just bump them. You know what I mean? And you kind of got to hope too, right, that South Carolina's off their game, because as we've talked before, Mark, I think the only way the Gamecocks lose and don't win at all is if they beat themselves. I'm not saying there aren't some really quality teams left in this tournament, but South Carolina is head and shoulders above the rest of the competition. So you do also need to hope that a player like Aaliyah Boston, South Carolina as a whole, is not on their game and, it isn't at 100%, if you will. It doesn't play their A game, I should say. So I think you bump her. I think you play physical. I think you get up in her grill, and I think you really force the issue, and you just hope that frustrates her enough, to get her off her game. But again, it's much easier said than done, and I certainly would not predict that to happen tonight, if you will.
Chris, look, some sports, we understand football is the only 10 level intensity, from fan bases here in the state of South Carolina. Okay. College football gets to a 10 level of intensity. No other sport does. This is not a bag on women's sports, but when you're ranking the different sports, right? I think maybe college baseball, Gamecock baseball is number 2. And then maybe Lady Gamecock basketball is number 3. But on a scale of 1 to 10, incorporating anybody who calls themselves a Gamecock, Chris, what is the level of excitement for women's basketball, women's Final Four? If I'm guessing, Chris, I would say a 6. I'm curious what number you would assign.
I'd say a 7. So I think we're pretty close. I think it's a little bit more than that. I think Gamecock fans more than anything love a winner. And like you mentioned, Mark, it's not a knock in regards to, like you mentioned, women's basketball or anything like that. But I mean, football is king, right? Nobody else would argue. Even as much as I love baseball, unless you're in Omaha, unless you're in the College World Series, it doesn't get to a 10, right? Football on a week in, week out basis, right? Like that Texas A&M game, even not even the Tennessee or the Clemson game, but even the Texas A&M game, what was a 10, if you will, and that was a regular season game. So I would say a 7. I think fans really invested. Hey, we're throwing a watch party, by the way, shameless plug, over at Carolina Ale House on Woodruff Road. We won't be in the building, but for those who won't either, we're going to throw a watch party there. So I mean, everybody's excited, everybody's fired up, and again, Gamecock fans, Mark, love a winner more than they love anything, right? So I think the excitement level is there, but certainly, obviously, you look at what's happening on the diamond and then football. I mean, it's really in a league of its own. And obviously, it just goes back to the interest level of those sports versus women's basketball. But certainly, there's still a lot of interest and a lot of excitement. And, how could you not be with this team looking to make it back-to-back national championships?
Chris, when you look around campuses, especially when that school is having unprecedented football success, you can see with your own eyes changes that happen on campus. You can see old buildings being torn down and new buildings being put up in their place. What's changed directly as a result of South Carolina's women's national championship already? And what changes on campus if South Carolina wins another 1, 2, 3 in the next couple of years?
Well, I think it just continues to build brand awareness, right? I mean, I don't know necessarily does the women's basketball national championship affect, what Shane Beamer does in his football program? Does it affect what Mark Kingston does in his program? But I will say this, I look at back in the early 2010s when Gamecocks baseball won the national championship in 2010, and I really feel like that sparked almost a mindset shift in Columbia amongst the other coaches, right? Steve Spurrier at that point was trying to break through, and I think he kind of looked at that and told his team, like, hey, listen, look, we can win a national championship at the University of South Carolina. Of course, 2010, the Gamecocks go on, they win the SEC East, and then 11 through 13. The rest is history. We all know what happened. So I think just to see other programs have success to that level and win national titles, it just further instills the belief that we can do it too, right? Like the Gamecocks, it's not some illustrious thing where like we can't win a national championship. I know baseball obviously already knows that, and that's very well defined, but I think it just continues to build your brand. It continues to push you forward, and it continues to make you say, why not us across the board, right? To steal the slogan that Steve Spurrier brought to Carolina football back in 2005. It just makes you say, why not us? Why can't we win and export? It makes you say, it makes you look at men's basketball, right? And say, like, if the women can do it and Dawn Staley can do what she can do, why can't Lamont Paris do it, right? Like, we can't sit here and say it's impossible because just a decade ago or so, nobody would have thought Dawn Staley, what they're doing, was possible. So, again, I think it continues to build your brand, push your brand in a positive way. I mean, winning is good, right? It doesn't matter what it is. Obviously, football is king. When you're winning in football, everything else is great, but certainly the more national titles and the more championships and the more wins you can stack up across the board, no matter the sport, the better, obviously, for your university.
So I would ask you then this, Chris. Do you believe that there is still a factor limiting the potential of South Carolina athletics, limiting the potential of South Carolina college football? Have all of those obstacles been addressed and or removed? In other words, can Shane Beamer win a national championship in Columbia now? If you're answering this in your heart of hearts, I'm not sure the answer to this question was always yes. I always, Chris, wanted to answer it yes, because I said, well, if Clemson could do it, why couldn't the Gamecocks? Well, you play in a much harder conference. That's true. But are all of the barriers standing in the way of the Gamecocks winning a 10-level intensity college football national championship? Are those barriers gone now?
Mark, I'll say yes because of who Shane Beamer is, because you're right. The answer has not always been yes, right? We've heard over the years the stories of how politics play a role in the South Carolina football and South Carolina athletics, and the board of trustees and who's on the board and the money they're willing to spend and the role they play in certain things. Right? I mean, this goes back, Mark, as recently as the offensive coordinator hire, and not to reopen the scab of all this and talk about Dabo Loggins and debate it, but I feel like this was not necessarily public knowledge, but something that I certainly heard, and many others had told me that were behind the scenes, that, the board of trustees raised concerns over the hiring of Dabo Loggins. Shane Beamer wanted him, and he basically just straight up told them, he was furious. He's like, listen, I want to run my program the way I want to run it. I want to hire who I want to hire. And I think, by the way, to go on the record, Shane Beamer should absolutely be able to do that. The board of trustees, you don't want a situation like Auburn, right, where it's a lot of red tape and you feel like the people behind closed doors, they're basically the ones running the program and the head coach is like a puppet, right? So I think for a long time that's sort of been the case. But, I sit here, Mark, today, I don't think there's anything stopping South Carolina from achieving that type of success. I think the fan support is there. I think you got a great university. You're the best conference in college football. There's nothing really stopping you that I can think of. It's just all about going out now and getting the athletes and executing and putting the best possible coaches in position. And, obviously NIL now is playing a role. And so you need to fork up the money, if you will, to compete with the best. And it's just the reality of the game. And Shane Beamer's already shown so early in his tenure, right? He's doing things that I don't think any of us expected. You look at how recruiting is going and you pull in a Nicholas Harbor, and, there's just a lot of things falling the Gamecocks' way. I was just thinking about this today. Like, it feels like Shane Beamer's building kind of a monster in Columbia. And I don't want to get out ahead of myself, but what he's doing all the right things right now. So, I think too, it's a fan base that's starving for that type of success and is willing to do anything and everything to assist in making that happen. So, I believe in the past, Mark, I think you're right. I think there had been things that were limiting South Carolina on the field, if you will, but I think you've got the right guy in place in Shane Beamer to make that happen. And so again, I don't put limiting expectations or limiting belief on Beamer in the program, because I've said it many times. I think Beamer sees Carolina football for what it can be, not what it's always been. And I think that's his greatest asset right now. And I think he's relentlessly committed to making that vision a reality.
Chris, Charles Barkley last night was on 60 Minutes and had some biting words for the current state of college basketball. We're going to share that with you here and get your thoughts. Here's Sir Charles.
It's a travesty and a disgrace. I'm so mad now how we can mess up something that's so beautiful.
How do we mess it up?
We can't pay all these players. In the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to have 25 schools that's going to dominate the sports because they can afford players. And these schools who can't afford or won't pay players are going to be irrelevant.
Chris, you heard him there. Agree or disagree with Sir Charles?
I think he's got somewhat of a point, but I kind of just look at this year. I think if anything, it's helping the parity of the sport. Look at March Madness. You know what I mean? Look at a school like Furman. Like, I don't exactly know what their roster is like, but Florida Atlantic, Miami, like Texas was just in the Elite Eight. Like, the parity that we've seen in March Madness. Guys, my bracket was busted 2 weeks ago. You know what I mean? Like, I had Purdue winning it all, but in regards to the sport as a whole, I mean, I know that you could argue that maybe it goes to the highest bidder, but I don't know, man. I feel like if anything, it's making it more competitive and more schools have a chance. Maybe I'm wrong, because I get what he's saying in regards to are these – now I just wonder, okay, moving past this year, does all of a sudden Furman's best players say, well, I mean, I was on national TV. I helped lead the Paladins to these heights. Now I can go play at a better school. And that's no shade at Furman, but, like, are some of these smaller school guys, are they now dipping out and they leaving? So I see where he's coming from in that regard. Like, all guys want to play for Blue Bloods, but at the same time, I mean, I think only 5 can play, right? So you're able to kind of cherry pick and get what's left over. And normally what's left over in college basketball, guys, is pretty good, right? There's a lot of really good players. So I don't know that I'd really agree with him 100%. I think it'll be interesting to evaluate. We'll know a lot more, obviously, that goes without saying in the next 3-4 years. But I think, if anything, it's bringing more competitiveness across college athletics. I think you're seeing it everywhere. Really good players are going to other schools, and the playing field's evening out a little bit, in my opinion.
Chris, do you owe Mark Kingston an apology?
Oh, I've given it. I mean, I've given it. I mean, I've at least on my show, I've been giving him credit left and right. I mean, I'll say there's a long way to go, so we still need to make a super regional, right? If you get to the regionals and crap the bed, well, then I don't know that apologies will be, I'll tell you this, Mark, actually, on that note, I have not formally, made an apology and said I'm sorry. And I don't think that's fair to do so until the job is complete. Because, again, the goal is getting to the super regionals. That was what we deemed as a successful season and what he needed to do to show progress in this season. So there's no guarantee. Even as good as they are right now, Mark, there's no guarantee that's going to happen. Right. So once the job is completed, I will be more than happy, especially like if this team got to Omaha, my goodness, I will shower Mark Kingston with apology and praise. But, I have said on a weekly basis that, and I said it last week, Mark, that because everybody right now wants to give Monty Lee the credit, and he deserves a lot of credit for his impact in this ball club. But you have to give Mark Kingston credit, because if South Carolina, Mark, was losing, do you think they'd be blaming Monty Lee or would they be blaming Mark Kingston?
100%.
We all know the answer. We all know the answer to that question. So you've got to give Kingston for bringing Lee in, for putting his ego aside and bringing in a guy that was also a head coach at the arch rival. I mean, they completely flipped this roster, Mark. I mean, they completely flipped it with these transfer portal guys and these freshmen who have obviously developed from last year to this year that are making big-time impacts. And some of your best players this year, right, are guys from the portal. A ton of your home runs and your production are portal guys. Mark Kingston's the one that brought them in. Hey, you had 3 guys, right, that turned down 6 figures in the MLB draft to come back to South Carolina because they felt like they had unfinished business. That speaks to good culture. That speaks to what Mark Kingston has built. So, listen, last year we all said what we said, and I think it was very fair. You finished under 500. We all had our opinions and our takes, and this wasn't just coming from me or from you. This was guys, that I won't name, but played at South Carolina and were some of the best players in school history that I talked to during the season. But everybody wants Gamecocks baseball to be successful and win more than we want to see a head coaching change, Mark, right? I mean, that just goes without saying. So
sure.
It's been a job well done for sure, man. And again, we've still got a long way to go, but I mean, a 6-0 start in SEC play, and you take on Mississippi State this weekend, who has been absolutely abysmal. They've lost 17 consecutive SEC games dating back to last season. You do have to go to their place, but they've been pretty awful. So
right.
You've got an opportunity, Mark, I think, to start 8-1 or 9-0 in SEC play. And it's been a job well done for sure for Kingston.
There you go. The words of one Chris Phillips. You can check him out daily on the Daily Crow at the Spurs Up Show on Twitter. I'll talk to you later this week, pal. Thank you.
Mark Diesel, appreciate you guys. Y'all have a great week.
All right, take care. The top 5 at 5 is next here on Offsides.